The first HMT watch I tried to service, we ended up failing with it. When I put it back together, I couldn't get any amplitude out of it, and I think it's because the escape wheel had gotten damaged when I had it fling off my tweezers and fly across the room about 8 feet. And so I've got another HMT watch that has the same movement that we're going to try to service and do this one right. This one is an HMT Jayanth, and it's got the same movement that the other HMT watch we worked on did. It's got the HMT 0231 movement, which is actually a India-built version of the Citizen 0201. It was built under license from Citizen, so it's identical to the Citizen movement. So if you're working on a watch that has the Citizen movement, this video will help you with that too. So what we're going to do first is get the movement out of the watch. And this watch has a snap-on case back, which is a real pain. I hate snap-on case backs because they're very difficult to get off without damaging the case. And I don't know if you can see it here, but there's some marks on the case there where someone had pried it up before using probably a screwdriver or something. It's starting to come up now. I had to force a razor blade in there to kind of pry it up part way because it was on so tight. There we go. That was a real pain. I absolutely despise these snap-on case backs. There's no excuse for using something like that on a watch this size when a screw-on one works so much better. Well, here's our movement, and you can see that there's not a whole lot of amplitude. You can tell the balance wheel is not swinging as far as it ought to. It's kind of sluggish looking. And when I put this on the time grapher earlier, when I had it fully wound, it was giving only about 158 degrees of amplitude, which is exceptionally low. It should be well over 250 when it's fully wound. And so hopefully all this needs is to be cleaned and relubricated and have the mainspring replaced. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to put the mainspring barrel that I took out of the other HMT watch that I worked on and put it into this one, because this one is the exact same movement and takes the same mainspring and same mainspring barrel. That way I want to buy another mainspring since I already have one fully assembled and ready to go. And that mainspring barrel is in good condition. I think the problem with the other movement, as I said before, is that I messed up the escape wheel and I can't get another part for it anywhere. So I've kept all the parts. I've got it disassembled in my parts collection. And if I ever find an escape wheel for it, I'll try putting it back together and see if I can make that watch work. But for right now, we're gonna go forward with this one. So I'm gonna put this mainspring barrel from the other one in this one, and I'm also gonna disassemble this watch completely, clean all the parts, relubricate it, put it back together, and see if we get good amplitude and can adjust it to good timekeeping accuracy. Then the first things we need to do is release the spring tension in the mainspring so that the movement will stop running, because I need the movement to be stopped before I can pull the hands later. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And to do that, I'm going to stick a screwdriver into the click and push it out of the way so that the spring tension can be released. And when I do that, I want to hold on to the crown, because if you just move the click out of the way, this will quickly spin out and release the spring tension all at once, and that can damage the watch. So what I want to do is I want to hold on to the stem, move the click out of the way, and let the stem slowly turn in my fingers as I hold on to it, and slowly release that tension so that it doesn't get released all at once and damage the gear train. And I'm not sure if I can do that under the camera and see what I'm doing, but we'll see here. Yeah, I can't do that very easily. I'm going to have to do that off camera, but that's how it's done. All right, I've got the movement stopped. Now we need to get the stem out so that we can take the movement out. To pull the stem, we have to push the stem removal button here. This watch doesn't have a screw that holds the stem in like a lot of the older watches I've worked on. This is a 1970s design, I think, and so it has a button like more modern watches do. So you push the button down with a flat-headed screwdriver, and while you're holding it down, you can then pull the stem out. Just like that. And then to get the movement out, we just take our case cushion here, lay it on top of the movement, turn the case over, and just lift the case off. And there we go. And you know what, before I took the hands off, before I took the movement out of the case, I should have turned the hands so that they were aligned with each other to make them easier to pull off. I think I'm going to put the stem back in. The stem is easy to put back in. You just shove it in and wait till it clicks. There we go. And I'm pulling it out to the setting position, turning the hands. Now, all three hands are more or less lined up with each other. So now we should be able to pull the hands pretty easily. To pull the hands, I need to get a piece of plastic here to protect the dial. And then I need my hand levers. And I'm just going to put them under the hands. Try to get them worked in underneath the hour hand and the minute hand both. I'm having trouble seeing that well enough. I'm going to have to look at that under my magnifier. Alright, I've got the hands off. I had to look at that under a magnifier because I wanted to make sure I had both hand levers evenly under each side so that I didn't pry up more on one side than the other, because if you do, you can damage the post that the hands ride on, or you can even damage the hands themselves. Now the next thing we need to do is take the dial off. To get the dial off, there should be a couple of dial screws. Now they're hidden underneath this movement spacer here, and I'm going to have to get the stem out before I can get that movement spacer off, I think. The movement spacer should pop off now. At least it did on the other one I worked on. I don't want to risk damaging something here by prying it up. There we go. Each of these watches I do is still a learning experience for me, so I want to make sure that I don't mess something up and make a dumb mistake. So looks like I'm going to have to go around it and just kind of pry it up all the way around. Now we can get the dial off. And the dial is held on by 2 dial screws. And it looks like the dial's not even sitting level on it. It looks like it's sitting a little higher on one side than the other. Hopefully that's not for me prying it up. Okay, here's one dial screw. You can see it there on the edge of the movement. And there should be one on the other side. Yeah, there it is. There's one on that side. So I'll go ahead and take those 2 screws out, and then the dial should lift right off. I've got the dial screws out, so the dial should just lift right off. And actually it did come off very easily. Often these dials are held on by dried lubricants and are hard to get off, but this one just fell right out. So this part of the movement at least was fairly clean. Here's the dial side of the movement. Here's the back of our dial. The front of it. It's a little bit dirty, but I'm not going to do too much to clean it because I damaged the dial on my other HMT watch by cleaning it. The next thing we need to do is remove the dial washer and the hour wheel, and they just lift right off. That's the dial washer, and here's the hour wheel. This is what the hour hand rides on. The post on the hour wheel is what carries the hour hand. And this is the cannon pinion here. The minute hand rides on the cannon pinion, and the second hand rides on the little thin post sticking up through the middle of the cannon pinion, which is the bottom of the 4th wheel. So before we can pull the cannon pinion, we need to get the minute wheel out of the way, and that's what this big wheel is here. So we need to take off the 2 screws that hold the minute wheel bridge on, lift out the minute wheel before we can take the cannon pinion out. So let's go ahead and do that next. I've got the 2 screws out. We can lift the minute wheel bridge now. And now we can lift the minute wheel. It's stuck down there. Let's see if we can encourage it to come up here. There we go. Now we also can remove the intermediate wheel here. And then I think we can lift out this is the winding pinion. And then we can lift out the clutch. Actually, the clutch may not come out because I think the yoke may be in the way to get it out. Let's try see if we can get it to come out though. Yeah, the yoke's in the way. I'm going to take that out first. The yoke is held in place by the set bridge here. So let's go ahead and take it out next. The set bridge is held on by a single screw. And the set bridge is this big piece of metal right here that's covering some of the other parts of the keyless works. That covers the yoke and the yoke spring. I've got the set bridge screw off so we can lift it off now. And the set bridge has a little spring here that goes on the detent lever, and that may have to be dislodged with a screwdriver before I can pull it off. Oh, there we go. It sprung right off then. There's the set bridge. Under the set bridge is the yoke spring, which goes back along the back of the yoke here and then curves around into the circular thing here. We need to get that out before we can take the yoke out. And getting that off without it springing away and getting lost, which happened to me when I disassembled the last HMT watch I worked on, is hard to do under the camera because I'm going to have to hold a finger over it and pry up the ends of it with a screwdriver. So I'm going to do that off the camera. Here's the yoke spring. You can see it's kind of shaped like a cane. I've been having trouble getting the camera to focus on it. There we go. Now we can lift off the yoke. It should come right off then without the spring there to hold it in place. And then we should be able to get the clutch out. There we go. Now the last thing we need to get off from the keyless works is the detent lever, and it's held on by this screw right here. So we'll have to take it off. I've got the detent lever screw removed. Now the detent lever's got two parts to it. There's the lever itself right here, and then there's a spring underneath it that's this flat spring with a hole on it. The hole is where the screw went through to hold it in place. And I think to get this off, I'm going to have to flip the movement over and push on the stem release button because that's part of the detent lever, and that should push the detent lever assembly out. And there we go. You can see there's the spring and the lever. And you can see here the detent lever has the stem retaining button sticking up from the top of it. The only other thing we need to remove now is the cannon pinion, but I'm not going to do that quite yet because the cannon pinion is hollow, and running through the middle of it is the lower spindle for the fourth wheel, which is what the second hand rides on. And if I pull the cannon pinion, there's a possibility of maybe bending that thin little spindle. So what I want to do is I want to disassemble the gear train first and get the fourth wheel out before I do the cannon pinion. Here's the Watchmaker side of the movement. In order to get the gear train out, we first need to remove the ratchet wheel because the ratchet wheel goes over the fourth wheel. This is the fourth wheel at the top here. So we need to get the ratchet wheel off before we can get the fourth wheel out. And the ratchet wheel screw is unique on this watch because for some reason Citizens designers decided to make the ratchet wheel screw a left-handed screw. Now on most watches, the crown wheel screw, that's this one right here, is a left-handed screw. And the ratchet wheel screw is usually a normal screw. On this watch, both of these screws are left-handed screws. And a left-handed screw is one that you turn the opposite direction you would normally turn a screw. So normally to loosen a screw, you would turn it counterclockwise. On a left-handed screw, you turn it clockwise to loosen it. And it's important to remember that because if you try to turn it the way you would turn a normal screw, you're actually tightening it. And if you force it, you can strip the threads in the screw, which you don't want to have happen. So I'm going to go ahead and remove both the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel and their left-handed screws. I had a bit of a hard time loosening the ratchet wheel screw because when I turned it clockwise to loosen it the way you would do for a left-handed screw, it wanted to turn the ratchet wheel and wind the mainspring, which we didn't want to have happen. So I had to kind of hold my finger over the ratchet wheel to hold it in place to keep it immobilized while I turned the screw. Now that's not an issue with the crown wheel. The crown wheel won't turn when you turn its screw because of the way it's designed. There we go. Now I can lift the ratchet wheel out. Hopefully there's not any spring tension in the mainspring that's going to get released when I pop this up because it's not wanting to come up here. Oh, there we go. Okay. It was just stuck. I'll go ahead and take the crown wheel off too since we loosened its screw. The crown wheel has a washer around the post that it rides on, and that washer needs to be taken out too. Okay, now that we have that off, we can remove the train bridge, and it's held on by two screws here. I loosen these screws off camera because it's easier for me to see them through my eye loop than it is to try to do it looking through the screen on my camera. Now that we got the screws out, we can go ahead and lift this. Now the train bridge is probably going to be kind of stuck down because of the lubricants that will be binding it to the pivots on the train wheel. So there's a little slot you can stick a screwdriver in here on the two ends. And actually that came off real easily, but sometimes you have to kind of pry it up a little bit. And now we can just lift out the fourth wheel, which is the one that's on the very top here. Just like that. Now to get, we can go and get the third wheel out too. That's this one right here. The center wheel, we'll have to take out another bridge that covers the center wheel. But before we can take the center wheel out, we need to get the cannon pinion off on the other side of the movement. So let's go ahead and take the cannon pinion off. To remove the cannon pinion, I'm going to use a pen vise. And what we're going to do is put the jaws of the pen vise over the cannon pinion. And there's the cannon pinion sticking up. It's a tube with a little gear at the bottom of it. And I'm going to put the pen vise over that tube and tighten it down. And then once I got it tightened, what you want to do is pull straight. You don't want to pull at an angle. You can bend the post if you do that. You can bend the center wheel post, which is what the cannon pinion rides on. So you want to be careful, but you can pull it straight and gently and slowly. You don't want to just pop it off fast. Just gently and slowly pop it off. Maybe give it a little turn to help it come off. And just keep working it until it pops off. There we go. And there's the center wheel post that it rides on. There's the cannon pinion and the jaws of the pen vise. Now I'm going to put the movement back in the movement holder so we can finish the disassembly of this part of the movement. Before I can get the center wheel off, another thing that has to be removed is the barrel bridge, because the barrel covers the center wheel. And I think we're going to have to take the balance wheel off as well. So let's go ahead and get the train bridge first. One thing we're going to have to do on the train bridge before we remove it is there's this little spring you can see inside this little cutout here. It's a little cane-shaped spring. That's the click spring. We need to remove that. To remove that, I'm going to put my finger over the spring and then pry up the end of it with a screwdriver. Let's see if I can do this on camera without losing the spring. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see the spring has popped out there. We also need to remove the click, and it's held on by a little screw right there. So let's go ahead and do that. The screw came out stuck to the screwdriver. Okay, now we can just lift the click out. Now the next thing we need to do is remove the barrel bridge itself, and it's held on by 2 screws, one on each end. So I'll go ahead and loosen those screws and we can pry it up. I've loosened the 2 screws, so let's go ahead and pull them out. Then the bridge itself may be stuck down, so we'll have to pry it up with a screwdriver. And there's little slots provided for that purpose on the ends. And then the barrel can be just lifted right out. I'm going to take out the balance wheel before I take out the center wheel. Now before I take the balance wheel off, I need to get the upper balance jewels out. And the way that these work is that there's a cap jewel that has to be removed, and there's a lower jewel underneath it. Now if you look at the cap jewel, it's in a little metal housing that's kind of square shaped and has 2 metal tines, one on each side. There's one here and one here. And you can see there's a little hole right there in the housing. What we want to do is take the tweezers and rotate this until one of the tines reaches that opening. And sometimes it helps to push on the one on the other side a little bit as well. But once you get it to the opening like it is now, then the jewel can simply be lifted out. And I'm going to use a jewel picker for that purpose, because these are hard to lift up with tweezers without losing them, because they tend to want to ping off the tweezers and get lost. This is a jewel picker. And of course the camera won't focus on it, but what it is it's got a ball with sticky plastic on the end. And so I just touch the jewel with it, and it lifts right up. And I think the jewel has fallen off of it somewhere. Yeah, it fell into the balance wheel, so let's see if we can. There we go. Now it fell out. Now you can see inside the housing where we took off the cap jewel, there's another jewel. It's a little tiny jewel with a little spiral looking spring around it. That needs to come out as well. And that lifts off with the jewel picker as well. I've lifted it out here and it fell down, so let's pick it up again, take it out. And now we can take the balance wheel off since we have the jewels out. It's a lot harder to get these jewels off if you take the balance wheel off first, because you can't just set the balance wheel down on the table, you'll damage the hairspring. So you'd have to put it on a balance tack, and then it's kind of hard to handle. It's easier to do it while it's still bolted to the movement. So there's a single screw that holds that in place, so we'll go ahead and remove that screw, and then we can lift the balance wheel out. We got the screw loosened, so let's go ahead and pull it out. And then the balance itself, the balance cock is held on by these 2 pins sticking up here, and so it sometimes takes a little bit of encouragement to get it to come off the pins. These HMT movements, they don't seem to be held on as tightly as on some of the old ETA movements and others that I've worked on. The Swiss movements tend to be held on tighter and harder to get off. Well, one of the posts is holding on real tight on this one, so I've got to be careful not to. I don't want it to fling off and fall over because it'll stretch out the spring and damage it. So I'm going to put my finger over the balance cock while I pry it up off that post. There we go. Now I've got it loose. I can pick it up with the tweezers now. There we go. There's our balance cock and our balance wheel. I'm going to set that down on the Watchmaker's paper here. And you don't want to store it like this because that can damage the hairspring. What we're going to do is pick them up gently together, the balance and the balance cock, and turn them over. And then I'm going to position the balance wheel so that the pivot for the balance wheel goes through the hole in the balance cock so that it doesn't get stretched out and deformed. And that's how we're going to store the balance wheel until we are ready to use it then, until we're ready to clean it. So I'm going to just pick it up just like that and set it into my movement or into my parts tray. And you can see it right there laying upside down just like that in the parts tray. All right, now I need to get the center wheel bridge off and then take out the escape wheel and the center wheel. And the center wheel bridge is held on by a single screw right there. So let's go ahead and take that out. Now the center wheel bridge, we can pry out from one side over here. I'm going to do that gently so we don't damage the center wheel. There we go. Oh, it's stuck to the center wheel pivot. That's interesting. Probably got dried lubricants in there holding it in place. That's one of the reasons why it's such low amplitude. There we go. Now we can lift out the escape wheel, which is on top of the center wheel. Actually, it looks like I can't take the center wheel out. I'm going to have to take out the pallet fork because the pallet fork is on top of it too. So let's take the screw out of the pallet fork bridge. And then the pallet bridge can be pried off. It's got a little slot we can stick a screwdriver in to get it off too. There we go. And the pallet fork's coming off with it because it's probably stuck on with lubricants. And you really shouldn't even lubricate the jewels for the pallet fork, so that's another reason probably why we're having low amplitude. If you lubricate the jewels for the pallet fork, it will reduce amplitude. Some watchmakers do that when they have too much amplitude as a way of reducing it, but that's not the problem we've got here. We've got too little amplitude, so when we put it back together, we will not lubricate that. All right, now we can pull out the center wheel. And I think there's one more thing we need to take off, and that's on the other side of the movement. On the bottom of the movement, there's the lower balance jewel, and it works just like the one that was on the balance cock. It's got the cap jewel and the lower jewel that has the little spiral spring. So we need to take this apart the same way we took that apart. Now this one will come apart the same way the other did. It's got the two metal tines that we need to turn until we get it to the opening. And I can't see it well enough on the camera screen for some reason, so I'm going to look at this through my magnifier before I show it to you. Okay, so we can stick our tweezers in here and rotate that. You can see the little metal tine I'm pushing against. And it looks like, okay, I think that's out. I think I can lift it out with a jewel picker now. No, it's not quite out yet. It's hard to see on the camera screen. I'm going to have to do this through my eye loop and finish it up. Okay, it was almost out. Not quite, but almost. So I had to turn it just a short distance more. And now it should come out with the jewel picker. There we go. And it fell into the movement there. But there's our cap jewel. And then we'll pull out the little spiral spring jewel too. There we go. And that is it. The entire movement is now disassembled. All we got left now is the empty base plate. So it's ready to clean. I'm not gonna make a video of the cleaning process because the cleaning process for these mechanical watches is exactly the same for all of them. So if you want to see how the watches are cleaned, I've got a separate video on watch cleaning that shows the complete process, shows which chemicals I use, it shows how to peg the jewel holes, how to pith the pivots on the wheels, how to use the watch cleaning machine. So if you want to watch that, I've got a link to it in the description for this video. and that video will also be listed in the playlist for this watch, so you can watch that. And then the next video that I make is going to be the video showing the reassembly and relubrication and adjustment process after I get done cleaning everything.